the mountain tonight, not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the king. The wind is howling like this swirling storm inside. Couldn't keep it in, heaven knows I tried. Don't let them in, don't let them see. Be the good boy you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. Well, now they know. Let it go, let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, let it go. Turn away and slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. It's funny how some distance makes everything seem small, and the fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. It's time to see what I can do, to test the limits and break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. Let it go, let it go. And I'm one with the wind and sky. Let it go, let it go. You will never see me cry. Here I stand, and here I'll stay. Let the storm rage on. My power flurries through the air and to the ground. My soul is spiraling in frozen fractals all around. And one thought crystallizes like an icy blast. I'm never going back. The past is in the past. Let it go, let it go. And I'll rise like the break of dawn. Let it go, let it go. That perfect boy is gone. Here I stand in the light of day. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Dulcimerica. My name is Bing Futch and I'm your host, and that was Let It Go from the motion picture Frozen. A huge hit and a really tough song to sing, even if you're not Idina Menzel. I almost did a John Travolta there, whatever he called her on that show. Anyway, before I go any further with this, I would like to give a shout out to Carmen McCoy. She's one of my patrons on Patreon and pledged in at a dollar amount that included a shout out on the Dulcimerica video podcast. So Carmen, thank you very much for your support, and to all my patrons who are out there just getting behind me and helping me to do things like record albums, produce this podcast, and also do educational programs for music in schools and libraries. I appreciate all of you. For just $5 a month, you can get my entire CD collection, my publications, tablature, behind-the-scenes video, all kinds of stuff. Check it out at patreon.com/BingFutch. Thank you guys, all of you out there who have been supporting me over the years. And one of my patrons, Bonnie, I believe, asked me about doing a podcast on the Chromatic Dulcimer. It's amazing, in 8 years I haven't done one. This is the very first one. So Let It Go is a great tune, but it's also a very complex song, one that you just cannot do on a standard mountain dulcimer because of the chord modulations and things of that nature. So I do it on a chromatic dulcimer when I perform it out. The chromatic dulcimer is scary for a lot of people because it just has those extra notes that are thrown in there, and people like to think about the dulcimer as being a simple instrument with all the wrong notes removed. That's the quote. But basically, if you have a standard mountain dulcimer with a 6.5 fret, that's pretty standard, you're not far away at all from being fully chromatic. You've got just 4 notes to add in to become a chromatic instrument. If you have a 1.5 fret, you're just 3 notes away from being fully chromatic. The key, and this is the key, no pun intended, is those notes that we like to avoid are just parts of a key signature. And once you understand about key signatures, then you'll be able to avoid those notes no matter what. This is the thing about the chromatic dulcimer, because it's got all 12 notes in the chromatic scale, we can play in any key we want to. It's been long lamented that a mountain dulcimer player can only play in a certain number of keys, and if somebody comes along with a guitar or fiddle and does something in a different key than we're used to, we have to sit that out or we have to retune it. Well, here with the chromatic dulcimer, you don't have to do that. So consider this sort of an entry look at how to get into playing the chromatic. Make sure we're organized up here on the fretboard and on the second camera. The first thing I want to point out is that I am in DAD tuning. DAD is a fantastic tuning. It's symmetrical so that you can flip chords around, and that's really, really super important when you're playing on the chromatic dulcimer, on the standard dulcimer as well. If you're looking at getting a chromatic dulcimer, there's a couple of points here I want to make, and one of them is about your positioning dots, which would be these little dots that we have on the mountain dulcimer and on other instruments. On the standard mountain dulcimer, a lot of different people do different things with their dots. A lot of people will put one at the 3rd fret, and they'll put a double one at the 7th fret in order to let you know that that's the octave. Some people will put one at the 5th fret, some people put them at the 2nd fret, but generally you'll find one at the 3 and at the 7th fret. When you make the move over to chromatic dulcimer, some folks will order a mountain dulcimer that has positioning dots that show them where the standard scale is located. I think that's a mistake. I think that's a bad move. Because what you're doing is you're basically going to hold on to a crutch to get you onto the chromatic dulcimer and hold on to that crutch as long as you're playing it. And I think what you should do is basically get the standard positioning dots that you'll find on a guitar. That's going to be at the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, and the 12th fret, the octave right there, and double dots right there. There's a couple of good reasons for that, none the least of which is your guitar playing friends, once they know what tuning you're in, can follow your hands as opposed to you following their hands, which a lot of dulcimer players simply do not do by nature of these positioning dots. The other thing is it will help you to understand music theory a bit more, and there's that scary phrase again, music theory. But the key to learning the chromatic dulcimer is basically to dive down deep, understand what notes you've got, how to build chords, how to shift and change those chords around, and probably, most importantly after all that's said and done, is begin jamming out and playing with it in all these different keys, and know your scales, of course. So let me show you what we've got laid up here. DAD tuning and our positioning dots at the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 12th frets. The first thing you want to do here is understand the chromatic scale. We've got 12 notes, so if we're on D, starting there, we're going to go up a half step for every single fret, all the way up to the 12th fret. Sounds a bit like walking up a flight of stairs. Those are all half steps as you move up the fretboard like that. So here's how we do the scale. We start with whatever note we're going to start with, in this case D, and then we're going to add sharps as we go up the scale. One thing to be very, very importantly clear on is that the notes B and C are a half step apart, as are the notes E and F. So make sure that when you go from B to C, you go directly there and don't call it B sharp, don't call it E sharp, just go from B to C and go from E to F. Moving up, we go D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and remember A sharp here, then B, then there's a C, C sharp, and then the octave D. That's 13 notes total, but 12 different notes in the chromatic scale. So if we were to do that up the middle string, we'd start with A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and A, the octave. Now, without having to think about all those notes, here's where the positioning dots come into play. The dots are going to show you the locations of the notes that live at those particular frets. Since we know we're in DAD tuning, we know that the 12th fret is going to have D, A, and D. There's an easy way to remember this, and I use acronyms and things like that to make it happen. Think about the bass string and the melody string as F-gab. F-gab, as in talk too much, gab. There's your F, there's G, there's A, and there's B. For the middle string, think of C-def, like that's deaf. Does anybody really say that anymore? C-def, C, D, E, and just make sure you remember that the F is F sharp at that point. So what good is knowing just those positions? Well, you can always move down or upwards from that instead of having to count all the way up the fretboard. Remember, when you go up, you are sharpening a note. When you go down, you're flattening a note, depending on what key you're in. So let's say, for example, we're going to go here at the 5th fret on the chromatic dulcimer. We know that we have got G right over there. So we've got F gab, F, G, A, B. There's G and there's G. We have C def, that's D. So G, D, and G. That would be the 3rd fret on a standard mountain dulcimer. On the chromatic, it's the 5th fret. So what you can do from here is, once you know that that is G, D, and G, from here you can go from G to G flat. Or you can go from G to G sharp. Now, depending on what key you're in, G flat may very well be called F sharp. F sharp and G flat are the same note. They're just spelled differently depending on what key you happen to be in. That's called an enharmonic spelling. You've got 2 different spellings, but the exact same pitch is being used. So remember that as you're moving up and down the fretboard. So knowing where those positioning dots are and what lives there is going to help you quickly locate these notes. Why is that important? Because this is the easy part. We're going to be taking all of our DAD chord shapes and just simply moving them over to the chromatic dulcimer. We have to allow for an additional half step inside of those chord shapes. So let's take a look at that real quick. First of all, we'll do our slant chord. And let's do a D chord since we're used to doing a 2, 3, 4 chord. Here's what a D slant chord will look like on a chromatic dulcimer. So far so good. That looks very familiar. Nope. Move the thumb up just 1. And there's your D major chord right there. So instead of going tic-tac-toe 3 in a row, we're going tic-tac, skip a fret, and then toe. And that's the new shape for your slant chords, and those can be moved up and down the fretboard. And of course, you can flip them around. Once you get used to landing this and then skipping that fret and moving over, all of those chord shapes are going to come right back to you really, really quickly. Let's look at our L-shaped chord. The L-shaped chord, let's go with a G. That would be 3, 3, 5. Notice the difference in the shape. Now, if this were going to be a standard mountain dulcimer, we would be spanning 3 frets, and we'd skip the fret in the middle to get our 3, 3, 5. But what we're doing here is we are skipping 3 frets, and the entire shape spans 5 frets altogether. Still an L shape, it's just a little bit longer. And you can, again, move this up and down the fretboard. So allowing for extra space once again in that chord shape. And then finally we've got, of course, the extended slant chord. So the extended slant chord normally is like a tic-tac-toe skip like we did with our slant chord on Chromatic. Here we're having to do quite a bit more of a stretch. It's step, skip, step, skip, skip, and then step, and there's your extended. Now that looks like a really big stretch, but consider that all of these half steps are closer together on the fret spacing, so your fingers are going to be about the same distance apart as they are on a standard dulcimer. Don't worry about it, but you might want to get into a shorter scale length because you're not able to cheat those spacings as much as you can on a standard dulcimer. When you've got, say, that fret's missing and you don't have to be to the left of the fret, you can sometimes hang out in the middle, no problem, and still get the note you're looking for. But now we don't have that option anymore because we've got all half steps here. So it takes some getting used to, but it's really worth it. There's your extended slant. And of course your bar chord. Now, you might not know about the little trick on how to name your different chords when you're in standard tuning and a standard mountain dulcimer. There's a little trick involved there. With the L-shaped chord, the root of the chord is on the bass. So whatever you are playing there, that names the entire chord. Since I know I'm playing a G here, that's a G major chord. With the slant, with the slant chord, whatever you're playing on the middle string is the root of the chord. Since I'm playing a D there, I listen to it, that's a D major. With the extended slant, whatever you're playing on the melody string is what is going to be the root of the chord. In this case, I am right below the F sharp, which means that this is F natural. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, gap, B. That's B. F, G, A, B. So there's B, that would be B flat, and there's a B flat major chord. So that's a really cool trick to have. Remember when you flip your chords over, however, the root's going to go to the opposite side. So instead of the root being on the bass string, when you flip this chord around, the root is now on the melody string over here. And with the extended slant, from the melody, the root goes over to the bass string when you flip it. And on the slant, there's no change whatsoever because you're on the middle string. So you're pivoting on that note. No matter what you do to flip it around, the root will be on that middle string. Now let's marry two of these ideas together. First, you've got the concept of the roots and how to name your chords, and you have your chord shapes, and then you've got these positioning dots to let you know what note you're playing, which means if you go by C, D, E, F sharp, there's F sharp. Let's go ahead and go boom, boom, boom. Here you have an F sharp major chord. If you're going by F gab and you go, oh, let's do this one. How about, let's go A and then go down one to A flat. So either we could do an extended slant chord as an A flat, like that. Or we could do an L-shaped chord inverted and get that same A flat in an L-shaped chord. Kind of cool, huh? So instead of you having to memorize all these different chords and all these different notes and all these things, use your positioning dots, use your existing chord shapes, allow for the extra space, recognize what that looks like, and then begin finding all of these new chords that you can play. Really cool stuff. Now, let's take a look at something else. What was I going to go to next? Okay. So, we have our chord shapes, and we're moving them around. Let's take a look at our scales and how this is going to work. So, our scale, our major scale, which sounds like this, notice I played that right out of the chromatic pattern and didn't have to do the walk up or anything like that. These are all half steps. All of these notes are half steps. If you went from the open note to the first fret on a chromatic dulcimer, you'd be going the distance, the interval of a half step. If you were to skip the first fret and go to the second fret, you will not be going a half step, you will be going a whole step. 2 half steps make a whole step. All together. Is that starting to look familiar there? Take out that fret and you've got a big wide space on the mountain dulcimer like we all have at the first fret. So if you start hiding those frets, you start to see your pattern emerge. When we play a major scale, we are picking particular intervals out of the chromatic scale. A major scale is a whole step, and a half step, then a whole step, another whole step, and then a half step to end the whole thing. So when I play that scale, look at what I'm doing. First note, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and then a half step. Voila, and there is your major scale. So you can start from anywhere on the fretboard on any string and follow that sequence and you'll get a major scale no matter what. So what note am I playing here? I'm here at F, gab, that's a G, G flat, or F sharp. F sharp or G flat major scale. And you'll be able to find that major scale no matter where you look. Really, really cool stuff there. Then we've got the minor scales, which is whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So if you follow that pattern no matter where you go, you'll come out with a minor scale. And make sure I did the right minor there. Whole step, going from here, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, and whole step. That's a major scale with flats 3, 6, and 7 for those who are taking count of that sort of thing. This is really digging in deep, but I'm not going to lie to you. Going to a chromatic mountain dulcimer involves some knowledge of music theory, or else you're going to be just swimming in stuff. So those who are ready to take the leap to the chromatic mountain dulcimer have probably already gotten on speaking terms with music theory and it's not freaking them out too much. But the more you know and the more you understand, the easier all of this is going to become. All right, now let's look at the next important thing here. That's going to be how to squash the chords and get a lot of different flavors. What we're doing when we're playing the mountain dulcimers, we're playing the available chords to us in a standard setting for the fretboard. Notice we play E minor, but we don't play E major unless you've got the 6.5 fret. Notice we play F sharp minor, but we don't play F sharp major. Notice we play G major, but we don't play G minor. It's one or the other. We've got major chords, we've got minor chords, we've got dominant 7th chords or 7th chords, we've got major 7th chords, we've got major 6th chords, minor 6th chords. There are all these different amazing chords that we can play in the world, but typically you don't get a lot of those on the standard mountain dulcimer. With the chromatic, you certainly can. So understanding how to build a chord is going to help you take this very basic formula and begin squashing it around. A major chord is a root, a third, and a fifth. Or to be more specific, it's a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth. And knowing the intervals is super important. I'll show you that here in a second. Root, third, and fifth, root, major, third, perfect, fifth. A minor chord is going to be a root and a perfect fifth, just the same as a major chord, but that middle note, the third, goes from being a major third to a minor third. You take that middle note down a half step and that gives you a minor chord altogether. Let me show you the intervals. Every single note in the chromatic scale has the name of an interval. And basically they are unison, if you play 2 notes on the bottom like that, then minor second, major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, tritone, perfect fifth, minor sixth, major 6th, minor 7th, major 7th, and octave above where we started. Each one of those has a little trick that you can use to memorize what it sounds like and then know what to call it. And ear training goes a long way in helping you to identify these tones. Like going for your minor 2nd. That's the theme from Jaws, right? Major 2nd, first 2 notes of the major scale. Minor 3rd, first 2 notes of Brahms' Lullaby, or 3 notes. Or if you're a Nightmare Before Christmas fan, what's this? Anyway, okay, so there's our minor 3rd. Major 3rd, Do a deer. Do a deer. Perfect 4th. Here Comes the Bride. Here comes the bride. Tritone. They used to call this the devil's interval because it sounds just evil, doesn't it? Until you put it in a romantic context. Maria, Maria, I just met a girl named Maria. Wonderful stuff. Anyway, perfect 5th. I always think of the flying monkeys from The Wizard of Oz. Yo-wee-yo. And you'll come up with your own tones and recognizable little references for this. Minor 6. It's Love Story. La-da-da-da-da. Major 6th. Part of the NBC jingle. NBC. Minor 7th. First 2 notes of the Star Trek theme. Major 7th. Wish I had something better than this for you, but it's in every single John Barry motion picture soundtrack. Or, knowing it's the major 7th and you have just one more half step up to the octave, you can hear it wants to go to the octave. And there's our octave. Same note, just an octave higher. Little tricks for you when you're trying to figure out this whole interval thing. Going back to our chords and moving them around. Take a look at our D chord right here. Roots on the middle string, and the 3rd is on the bass string. There's an F sharp, D, F sharp, and on the melody string we've got A right there, our 5th. So we have D, F sharp, and A. 1, 3, 5, root, major 3rd, and perfect 5th. With the ability now to alter any chord that we play on the chromatic dulcimer, we can go down a half step with our major 3rd, take it down to a minor 3rd, and now we have D minor. Bring it up, D major. Take the 3rd down to the minor, and there you have, once again, D minor. Let's flip it around so you can hear it a little bit better. D major, take it down. D minor, take it up. Cool beans, huh? So now we can play both major and minor chords up and down the fretboard. With the L-shaped chord, roots on the bass string, 3rd is on the melody string, and your 5th is on the middle string right there. So the note we want to change is going to be on the melody string. We're going to bring that 3rd down a half step, and there you have your G minor. G major, G minor. So all we're doing is we're squashing now, we're changing the chord shapes we've become familiar with, and we're moving them around to get these different chords. Finally, for our extended slant, we've got the roots right here, the 3rd is right here, and the 5th is right here. We'll move this one down and get our minor chord. Now what note am I playing? I'm up here, F, G, A, B, there's C, so that's a C major chord. Moving this major 3rd down here is going to give us now a C minor chord. Back to C major, and back to C minor. That's great fun right there. A lot of fun being able to move those around and playing all these different chords. The dominant 7th chord. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky if you're working with 3 strings. The dominant 7th chord basically is a major chord that has a 4th note added to that chord. Those 3 notes that make up the triad of our chord. We are now adding a 4th note to it, and that note's going to be the flatted 7th note of the associated scale. So in the case of D major, D, F sharp, A, think about the 7th note of the D major scale, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. C sharp, flatten that note, make it a C natural, add a C to D, F sharp, and A, and you'll get a D7 chord. In shorthand, it sounds like this. But there are only 3 strings playing here. So what needs to happen is one of those notes need to be dropped out. Not, of course, the 7th, the flat 7th, because it's what makes the 7th chord sound the way it does. Oftentimes you can drop out the root of the chord, or you can drop out the 3rd, or drop out the 5th. But don't drop out the 7th, because that is what's helping you to make that 7th chord. That's getting really deep into it, but I just wanted to show that to you. Here's how you play a 7th chord very easily. Bar, and then go down 2 frets. So from the bar, go down 2 frets. That's going to add in the minor 7th. So we know then if that's the minor 7th for this chord right here, then if we slide up, the interval goes from minor 7th to major 7th. Which means if you play this chord, you'll get a major 7th chord. And those are pretty, and you can play those on a standard dulcimer as well. So those are a couple of the chords that you can do. Again, I won't get too deep into the theory of this. I got a book for that. I got a couple of books for that, actually. But I just want to show you how you're getting around the chromatic dulcimer. And that's sort of the basics of it right there. Just start moving those chord shapes around. And eventually what you're going to find is because you can get all those chords by moving just the one shape and squishing it around, you'll find chord progressions that really, really come together very nicely. Here's one right here. Just coming out of this F shape, I'm doing some things. This is actually a 7th chord. And then, look at that. And then look at this. That's a lot of color for just coming out of a basic F shape. So that is a lot of stuff for you guys to process right now. If you have a chromatic dulcimer, hopefully you're following along. If you don't have one, replay this over and over again. But the thing I think that you want to do is start training your ear to recognize the intervals. Once you start doing that, it is the key to unlocking chords, it's the key to unlocking melody, and it's the key to understanding more about your fretboard. There are all kinds of ear training apps out there. My favorite one is called Better Ears. It's available for the Apple iPhone and for Android users. And it's a, I don't know, $7, $12 program, something like that. Seems like a lot of money, but it is absolutely invaluable. What you want to do is just train your ear to recognize those intervals. And they'll come in handy as you start studying chord theory, your scales, and moving those chord shapes around on the chromatic dulcimer. I think I'm going to leave you with that. Also, take a look at my method for beginning, method for chromatic mountain dulcimer. Method for chromatic mountain dulcimer is available through my website at bingfutch.com. Also available on the Folkcraft Instruments website at folkcraft.com. And that is, as far as I can tell, the only chromatic mountain dulcimer book on the market right now that gets you hardcore into the music theory and understanding what's going on here. It also comes with audio files so that for every example and exercise you have something you can listen to, something you can see, and then a reference for being able to play on the instrument. I certainly hope this has been helpful, if not terribly overloading, but if you're going to make that step from standard mountain dulcimer to chromatic mountain dulcimer, it's good to know what you're getting into and what to look for. Again, I think it's very important for you to get positioning dots if you're going to order a chromatic at 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12. Don't worry about the standard stuff, and if you're going to have to put markers for where your old standard mountain dulcimer stuff is, go ahead and put them on the side there, because in time you won't need that crutch anymore, and if you litter up your fretboard with all these dots, it'll make it even more upsetting for you as you're trying to figure things out. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll have 4 future Dulcimale segments. We'll bring this up. But until next time, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I promise the next one won't be nearly as hard, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks for tuning in.